Hello and welcome to the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast with me, Errol Lawson. If this is your first time joining us, we want to welcome you. It's great to have you with us today. The Rising Generation exists to inspire and equip Christian leaders from all walks of life, from all around the world, to fulfill their God-given potential. By hearing these interviews with established, internationally recognized leaders, we hope you'll be inspired to connect the dots between where you are now and where it is God has called you to be. Now, to receive notifications about future episodes, simply subscribe to our podcast show by either on iTunes if you're on Apple, or on Stitcher, the Stitcher app if you're on Android. You can find out how to do that just by going to our webpage at www.errollawson.com/podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends, share it with your loved ones. Hopefully they will also benefit from the content. Guys, thanks for listening. Before we go into today's show, here's some news for you.
At some point in their lives, every great leader runs up against one problem that is simply impossible to ignore. How are they going to fund their vision? Today, Errol is offering you a free copy of his first book in the Rising Generation Leadership series entitled Big Vision, No Money: 5 Keys to Funding Your Vision. In the book, you'll find guidance from some of the great leaders featured on this podcast about the way Christian leaders should think about money and approach their finances. Simply go to www.errollawson.com to download your copy today.
Hello and welcome to the Leadership Podcast again today, broadcasting all the way from Birmingham in the UK to wherever it is you are in the world. My special guest today is Pastor Mike Royal. More than a pastor, Mike is the church engagement leader at the Cinema Network. He's also a chaplain at the Birmingham and Solihull Mental Health Trust. He's the co-founder and former chair, former national director, and now the non-executive director at TLG. Mike, I know you've done a whole lot more than that. Fill in any gaps, if you will, first of all, in your bio for us there. Thank you for joining us today. And then give us a glimpse into your world and what you're up to right now.
Great. Thank you, Errol. It's great to be able to talk to everyone, especially from Birmingham, which is a city close to both of our hearts. My background, I'm an urban planner, actually, by background. I spent a number of years in church pastoral ministry, and I was national youth director for one of the kind of main Pentecostal denominations for 4 years during that period. Pastored kind of in near Bradford, and also latterly in Birmingham, but probably about sort of 12 years ago went on a real journey of really kind of realigning my focus around kind of beyond the four walls of the church. So what I would describe as gospel-centered social action, how the church engages effectively with its community so that word and deed really come together, and we're able to share the good news of Jesus Christ with some credibility, backing it up with some action.
So where did it all begin for you? How did you, what were you doing beforehand, before ministry and leadership, and how did you transition into what it is that you're doing right now?
So I think for me, church pastoral leadership really took me onto the front line of the community, and I saw firsthand. I was in a small northern town that had kind of suffered kind of from the sort of deindustrialisation of the 70s and the 80s. I kind of arrived there in 1993, and it was still in that inertia. And you saw firsthand the impact that was having kind of on hard-pressed communities kind of in that local area. And so I began to kind of do what the church does best, which was kind of just to sort of roll up your sleeves and to start to make a difference. So began to work with people who had life-controlling addictions, substance abuse addictions. Began to kind of work with kind of mothers with some, classic kind of mother and toddlers groups. Began to work with young people. That was really interesting because a lot of the young people we were working with in the immediate area were people from another religious background, from a Muslim background. So I learned a lot about kind of Christian-Muslim relations and how you kind of do that well. And then just the kind of standard kind of youth stuff kind of as well. And so I really cut my teeth. But what it showed me is that there was a job to do kind of in the community.
And was there a turning point for you in that journey where maybe you were heading in one direction, your leadership journey, and something happened, a moment, a revelation that caused you to kind of change direction?
Yeah, definitely.
Tell us that story.
But I would say that it wasn't one crisis, but a series of crises.
Right.
I'm a great believer that actually there has to be a level of discontinuity and disruption to what you're doing for the new radical to come through.
Right.
And I certainly experienced that. I would say over a 5-year period that kind of probably started around about 2000 and kind of 2005 I made a shift that I was just going to give the next period of my life to ministering beyond the four walls of the church and enabling the church to do that better. So it wasn't
Tell us a story about that. What happened?
Yeah. So I was in pastoral ministry in the church in Birmingham, and again, coming off the back of a really tough time that the city of Birmingham had been through. So we had, the infamous kind of shootings that had happened in Aston. I was pastoring in Aston. I was associate pastor in a church in Aston, working particularly around young people. We began to respond to that issue, set up a street pastors team, began to work on the streets there. And I guess that was the next step on for me from the work that I'd already been doing kind of near Bradford. And I think that in the end, the street pastors team was fantastic, but knew we had to establish something that would be a permanent, would have permanent and rigorous impact on the lives of young people. And so the charity that myself and some friends had set up in 1998, TLG, we were just working in Bradford at the time. We took a decision to go national, and it was at that point where I decided that was what I was going to commit to full time. And so I moved on from pastoral ministry and took up the role of national director. And over the last decade, we've planted 12 of those centres around the country, working in London, working here in Birmingham, working in Manchester and other big towns and cities throughout the UK, making a real difference to the kids that the local council simply has kind of gone, do you know what? We can't work with them anymore.
A lot of leaders are listening right now, emerging leaders, established leaders too. And what do you reckon the lesson is in that journey there for us?
Yeah, I would say that sometimes we treat frustration as a negative thing, but I think frustration's a positive thing. I would say that probably from 1998 to 2005 were some of the most frustrating years of ministry for me. But it was positive. It was God stirring me. It was God disrupting the status quo and saying, Mike, I've got more for you to do. Not to diminish what I was already doing, because it was great work and I was working for great organisations, great churches, etc. But actually, it was causing me to feel an unsettledness that basically said, don't settle for what you've got. I've got something else for you. And so that would be my big thing. Don't see that kind of frustration as a negative. It's God stirring your heart.
Amen. And what's been your biggest challenge in leadership?
I think the biggest challenge for any leader is to come to terms with themselves. Come to terms with their strengths, come to terms with their weaknesses. And be completely comfortable in your own skin. So I always kind of say to people, when you're looking for leaders, don't look for leaders like yourself. Look for leaders that are going to fill the gaps for your own weaknesses and bring those people around you. For me, I'm a big picture person. For me, I understand, I've sort of done my strength finder, and I know that, my strengths are kind of making stuff happen. It's maximising opportunities. It's drawing people into the vision. It's kind of vision casting and creating the kind of a positive environment that people will want to work together. But I know that my weaknesses are, attention to detail. I know that my weaknesses are being task orientated. So I make sure in whatever I'm doing, I bring task orientated and detailed leaders around me that will complement my strengths. So it's about playing to my strengths, managing my weaknesses by making sure I've got people strong in the areas that I'm weak around me.
That's great. And at this stage now in your leadership journey, how do you define success?
Yeah, so I would say that success is not, for me now where I am in my leadership journey, success is not so much about what I deliver, but it's about what I enable others to deliver. So I've kind of moved into this stage of life where I'm recognising actually the best thing I can do is equip other people so they can go and do, rather than trying to do it myself. Doesn't mean that I don't do anything, of course I do. There's lots of stuff that I'm doing, but a key part of my ministry is enabling others to do.
That's great. And I think it was John Maxwell that said that success is hidden in your daily routine. Typically speaking, I'm sure it changes all the time, but what does the first 90 minutes of your day typically look like?
Okay, so I would typically get up. The first thing I would do is have a quick check in on social media, have maybe a quick check-in in some key emails, and then I'd go for a walk. I'd go for a walk in my local park, and that walk would be a time where I can pray, where I can think, where I can reflect. I've come back, I've have some breakfast, and then I'm a morning person, so I'd really like ideally to start work around about 8 a.m. in the morning. And so by the time I've kind of got to kind of mid-morning, kind of like you've done half a day's work, you get into 11:30, 12. Wow. So that's what the early part of my day looks like.
That's good. And then, are there any other key habits that have contributed to your success over the years?
Yeah. So I'm really inquisitive, and I really constantly want to throw up my own paradigms. I want to throw them up in the air and see where they will land. So I'm really keen for my own belief system to be challenged, my theology to be challenged, my understanding of leadership to be challenged. And actually, I want it to be challenged by other paradigms that ordinarily I might not believe in. Right. Because I think in that way you get stretched and you open yourself up to other modes of thinking. Too many leaders for me I see, but know what they know, believe what they believe, and anything outside that box they don't want to know. Well, I believe in having a really liberal education that opens us up to a broad spectrum of understanding and challenges some of our paradigms.
And you touched on it earlier on, but what's your biggest weakness as a leader?
Getting bored easily, if I'm really honest.
Okay.
So one of the things I've really tried to do is make sure that I stay with stuff for a long period of time. So my first pastorate, I was in the church for 10 years. I've just completed a stint as National Director of Theology. That was 10 years. There's some other stuff that I've done in the mix of that, that maybe I've done for 5 years or something. But I've tried my best to stay with stuff because I know that my personal weakness might be that I could quite easily get bored quickly and jump from thing to thing. So I've been really deliberate about maintaining a level of consistency and longevity in what I've been engaged in.
That's good. And what's your biggest strength?
I think my biggest strength is drawing people into a vision. They call it woo, winning others over. I think that I'm at my best, and alongside that, just activator, so making stuff happen.
But tell us about that sort of woo. Tell us about how we draw people into a vision. How do you do that? What's your...
So I'm a great believer that people will buy into you way before they'll buy into whatever your use the word in inverted commas, selling. You know, they'll buy into your personality, they'll buy into your integrity, your character, your competence. They buy into the package that is you. And so in recognising that, I seek to build trusting relationships, because we transaction around trust. That is the basic currency of doing business. So for me, I want people to trust me, and then I want to make sure that I've got the right team in place that's going to deliver on the trust people have put in.
Are you seriously fired up about growing as a leader in business or church-based ministry? Are you feeling somewhat frustrated about not having realized your full potential in what you've been called to do? Could you do with someone to help you get some extra clarity, or to be a sounding board for your plans and ideas? Great athletes have coaches, so do great leaders. The right leadership coach for you will result in an increased sense of clarity, direction, and purpose, dramatically increasing the results you achieve. If you're ready to step up, contact Errol to book a free, no-obligation, introductory coaching session and see whether Errol is the right coach for you. Errol takes the lessons learned from his own leadership journey and from his extensive research to help leaders and entrepreneurs to step into their biggest challenges and rise to their next level. Email admin@errollawson.com right now to schedule your call.
And you know, if you look back at the beginning of your leadership journey, what, if anything, was holding you back from moving from stepping up to the leadership responsibility?
That's a good question. I think very early on in my formative years as a leader, probably a little bit of a lack of self-belief. But I had a lot of good people around me who kind of told me, you know, if I work at stuff, I could be a success. I remember a moment when I was finishing the second year of my degree, and one of my lecturers pulled me into her office. I was 20 years old at the time, and she said, "Mike, you're on the borderline a 2-1 first. If you work hard, you can get a first." And I just needed to hear that. That was a spur that I needed to hear that. And that was a success. I got a first, and actually in that particular establishment, I was the first black person to actually get a first class degree in on that degree course, which I'm very proud of.
That's great. So just that sense of self-belief in him.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes it might be a teacher. It could be your mum, or could be your dad. It could be your carer. It could be someone in the workplace. It could be someone in the church. But I think there are moments when someone speaks something to you. It's easy to dismiss it, but actually, it could almost be a prophetic word. The woman that said that to me, she wasn't a Christian. She just saw my potential, and she said, "If you work hard, you can do it."
It's great. It's great. So who are your most significant mentors? Tell me your top 3 mentors.
Okay, yeah, happy to do that. So from a church leadership perspective, it would be Reverend Les Isaac, who is the founder of Street Pastors, who for me was a real mentor in my development as a church leader, but also in my development of having a community perspective beyond the 4 walls of the church. Theologically, it would be Professor Robert Beckford, who for me, I did a master's in Black Theology under Robert, who was my supervisor, who just completely challenged my theological paradigms, and that still stands me in good stead in my work in the community. And the third person is a much more recent person. It would be Archbishop Doye Adama, who I now relate to as my Archbishop. Just a man you sit in his presence for an hour and a half, and you're sitting in the presence of a man who knows the heart of God. And I just find him an amazing encouragement and a depth of wisdom that I just find a real well that I can draw from.
Let me just dig a little bit deeper into those three relationships, please. So the first was Reverend Les Isaacs. By the way, guys, if you go back to episode number 2 on the podcast, you'll hear the interview there with Reverend Les Isaacs. Really recommend you go back and check that out. So Reverend Les Isaacs, and then the second was Robert Beckford, and then the Archbishop. And what's the best piece of advice they've each given you along your journey? Starting with Reverend Isaacs.
The best piece of this is a bit of a curveball, but it's the thing that comes to mind. So when I came into ministry, there was an expectation that you kind of just sold up everything and you just gave all to the Lord. And in one sense, I did give all to the Lord. But Reverend Les Isaacs said to me, Mike, whatever you do, don't sell your house. That was singly the best piece of financial advice anyone has ever given me. So that's the kind of that's the Les one. In terms
Robert Beckford.
In terms of Robert Beckford, there isn't one thing that comes to mind. But when I was doing my master's degree, I decided to take a line of course that basically critiqued kind of Black theology. By the way, I'm completely committed to a Black liberation theology kind of paradigm. But he encouraged me to do it, and his encouragement for me to do that was just brilliant. It's just what I needed to do, because in critiquing it, I actually have confidence in it as theological praxis, like theory and practice coming together, moving forward. So just that encouragement was brilliant.
What was it about that? Was it just from a leadership development perspective? Was it about what did he actually ask you to do?
Yeah, it was critical inquiry. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Too often we kind of just go with what we know. I remember when I was studying Black theology, one morning I was talking to Viv about it, and she wasn't really studying theology, and she thought this Black theology stuff was a bit dodgy anyhow. And she looked at me, she says, "You have lost your faith." And I said, "I haven't. I've just thrown it up in the air, and I'm not sure where it's all landing." And Robert gave me the confidence to do that. And I'm in a much better place today because of it.
Cool.
And then Archbishop, one of the things I've had to do is to really write a document that really focuses on my ministry kind of here in inner city Birmingham, but also kind of more broadly in the global south, and particularly in Ghana. And it's his attention to detail in me redrafting that document time and time again till it's perfected. And that's been really good, because if I have a weakness, it's probably attention to detail.
It's great. And almost done now, Mike. What's the one thing you're most fired up about right now?
I am fired up about the contribution that the church can make to social action on the ground. I think with the current kind of economic kind of state that we're in, the fact that the local authority funding is decreasing, I'm not in favour of that, but there is an opportunity for the church to step into the breach and to make a difference. And I want to see the church kind of doing that, because I think when we do that, it brings credibility to the message that we put.
That's great. And is there a book or a resource you'd recommend for a leader or entrepreneur that's listening right now?
Yeah, I want to recommend one for the well, for predominantly the women listeners, but also I would encourage men to read this book as well. So it's by Reverend Dr. Kate Coleman, and it's called The 7 Deadly Sins of Women in Leadership. It is a brilliant book, and in my opinion, in time may well become a classic. I'd encourage every woman leader to read it, but I would also encourage men to read it as well, so that they have an understanding of some of the challenges that women face as they seek to push forward into.
Great. And guys, if you go back and check out episode number 10, you'll hear Reverend Kate Coleman speaking there about the book and about much more. Really recommend you go and check out another great episode with Dr. Reverend Kate Coleman. Mike, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great having you. Is there a final word of parting wisdom you want to leave with our listeners today?
Yeah, I'm going to leave you with my favourite scripture, which is simply this: the joy of the Lord is your strength. Amen,
amen, amen. And do you have a website? How can we find you online or otherwise?
Okay, so I'm on Facebook. So I'm on Facebook as Mike Royal. I'm on Twitter, which is @_ Mike Royal. I'm also on Instagram as Mike A. Royal. Website, Cinnamon Network is cinnamonnetwork.co.uk, and TLG is tlg.org.uk.
Brilliant. Mike, thank you so much for your time today. God bless you, sir.
God bless you.
Thank you again for joining us today on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast. I pray you've been inspired, you've been lifted, you've been encouraged to take your personal leadership to the next level. We really encourage you guys to just take action, make it happen, do something, start somewhere, go out and change the world in some way, big or small. Guys, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, please share with your friends, share with your loved ones, your colleagues, someone out there you think might benefit from hearing this great content. And if you want some more questions answering, you got a question, email me, Errol@errollawson.com. Or if you want a free 30 to 45 minute coaching session with myself around a leadership challenge or issue you're working on in your business, your church, or in your organization, please feel free to email me right away. We'll get you booked in. It's Errol@errollawson.com. Thank you again for listening. Go to our iTunes page, check it out, check out the previous episodes. Give us a nice review, that would be awesome. Really appreciate if you could do that for us. We really appreciate you just for being here and listening. Thank you so much. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Rising Generation.